to the Wrangler Xtreme Bronc Chute Talk. This is where we're going to be getting to know the cowboys that you've seen have really great success in the arena, but we want to know who they are outside the arena, what shaped them to get them to where they are today. And our first guest is Tony Caldwell, recently crowned Australian champion in the APRA in the Bronc riding. We're really excited to have you here today, Tony.
Thank you very much for having me, Dallas.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, you had really great success down there in Victoria, and we will kind of get into that in a minute. But I wanted to kind of talk through your background, how you grew up and how you really got started in rodeo in the first place. I think, the journey we went on back then really shapes who we are today and, the success that you've had recently. So let's kind of get into that, kind of take us through where you grew up and how you first got started in rodeo.
Well, I grew up in Caldwell in northwest New South Wales, and I didn't come from a rodeo background at all. I had a couple of uncles that used to get on the local buck jump shows and stuff like that. So I was exposed to it in a way, I guess, but I never, my father never rode and my mother never barrel raced or anything like that. Like a lot of other bronc riders or rodeo people, have got that behind them. But we just grew up out there as kids. And when I went up to the Gulf in about 2000, it was, and the bloke I worked for, he rode a few broncs, and I bought a saddle off him, and had my first ride at Saxby Roundup in year 2000, and never looked back. We just sort of poked around and done a few bush shows and stuff for a while, and then a few people that had travelled to a few APRA rodeos, they were like, you ride good enough, you should come to a few pro rodeos. So that took them about 2 years to get me to go to them, because I didn't think I was good enough back then. So anyway, and once they finally twisted our arm hard enough, Fred Osmond and myself, we jumped in the car and away we went.
That's really interesting, and I think it's unique. There's not many people in rodeo that grew up without a rodeo background. There's a lot of generational cowboys and cowgirls out there. So that's a really unique way to get into the rodeo scene. So how old were you when you first kind of got on your first bronc?
I was a fair bit older than most of the boys getting around now. I was 18 when I got on my very first one. So you talk to a lot of the boys now, and they've been getting on them since high school. So they're 16 and 17, and they've been on. I think in my first 5 years, I got on about 20 horses. I think it wasn't very many before I went to like a rodeo, and once we went to, I got on about 30 horses in the year of 2005 when I first joined up. So, but we went ahead in leaps and bounds after about 2005, I think.
And being out there in Tibooburra, it's pretty remote area of Australia, and that would make it a little challenging to get down the road to rodeos. Was that a challenge to really commit to rodeos when you were living so remotely?
I think if I didn't have Fred to travel with back then, it would have been a lot harder, yes. But we were both very determined that we wanted to ride bucking horses, and it didn't matter how far we were going to drive. We were going to go to them. So we had many of, same as a lot of other blokes, we had many of overnighters, driving Sunday night after Chute rodeo to get back to work Monday morning in Tibooburra. So I think when we sat down and worked it out, our closest 3 pro rodeos were 730 kilometres, 800 kilometres, and 830 kilometres to our closest 3 pro rodeos.
That is a dedication. I don't know if I could do that. So that's, just shows the commitment that you had, and, you've had such great success. So that's really great to see. And I mean, you talked about, bronc riding was your thing back then. Was there any thoughts, of jumping on a bull or a bareback? What made you think bronc riding was what you wanted to stick to?
I've always just the style of bronc riding, and I suppose sort of more the classic event, I suppose, of the rough stock events. So I've sort of always, I did get on a bareback horse once, and I got on a couple of bulls, and I didn't, I headbutted a bull once, so that was the end of it for me, and broke my nose. There wasn't as much bull riding and bareback riding out in the sort of when we were getting going out west. So, just thought it was a lot easier, and there was more saddle bronc horses to get on. That was the path I took.
So let's go back to that, the first big wins that you had under your belt. I think everyone can kind of remember those really memorable moments. What were those first big wins that you got that made you, think that, having a title in your sights was something that you could achieve?
I don't really know which one now. It's a while back, I suppose. But I remember I got on, I think about 2008, where I had a really good year. And I think that was probably when I realised I had the ability to mix it with the best of them. Before that, I was just sort of, midfield sort of a cowboy. But after about 2008, I went to a Glen Kent and Bruce Odell school. And I think the same year I went to a Darryl Kong school. And, they're all blokes now that are involved with extreme broncs and very passionate about bronc riding. And I think that was what sort of kicked me along to go that, a bit more serious, I suppose.
Yeah. And, you mentioned those clinics there. A lot of people have kind of had people along the way when they first get started that have had a really big impact and kind of mentored, or, you've seen someone's riding style that you really liked. Was there someone along the way that really helped you back then when you were first getting started?
I think obviously the blokes that we travel with and that, but the highlights, like the mains, that's like standouts for me, be the likes of Bruce Odell and them blokes that used to take their time to come and give you some advice and stuff like that. And Glen Kent, he gave me the basics right from word go when we were travelling down to them South Australia rodeos, and I still remember that now. And I tell young fellas now them same things that Glen Kent and Bruce Odell told me years ago. So that's them sort of blokes are definitely blokes that have helped me out a lot.
And that's good to see that, they had an impact on you and gave you really great advice. And that's something you can now pass on to the younger generation. So let's talk about your first Australian title win. When was that in the APRA? I know you've won other titles in the ABCRA as well, but let's look at that gold buckle, that first gold buckle that you won. How did that season go for you? When was it? And, what challenges did you have along the way?
Well, that was in 2013, Dallas. I won the first. It was actually the ABCRA and the APRA won the same year. So I was pretty lucky in that respect. But I didn't. I had work commitments pretty solid that year, so I only rodeoed about probably 6 months of the year, if that. And I went to the pro finals, sitting about 12th or 14th or something like that, and just drew good horses and had decent sort of finals, I suppose. I had one round, and I think I was third in a round, and I won the average, and that gave me about 10 points in front of Glen Kent to win the title. So it was just, it worked out for me that year. Like I rode a lot better in other years, and other boys, just never come up with the cookies. But that it was just my year that year, and it worked out.
And, going from 2013 to 2021, you had an epic finals this year. You were equal second in the first round, won the second round, second in the third round, and cinched that title in that final round. That is going to be one really successful finals. Take us through that week, down in Victoria, and how it was from your perspective.
For me, like I've spoke to you before, I was a bit reluctant about even going because I was, wasn't feeling the live list and the rest of it. And Eddie Gill pretty much made me go. He abused me a few times, and so I owe it to him for getting me to go down there. And Brad Pearce, them blokes encouraged me to go, and it worked out really good. There's good horses all the way through the finals. I don't think there was anything there I didn't want to get on. They were good horses set up by the contractors. Brad Pearce done a great job setting all the pens, and the camaraderie between all the boys down there it's definitely the most enjoyable finals I've been to, as far as everyone backing each other. We'd all sit in the same group together, and we'd all have a beer after the finals together every night. It was just it's definitely the funnest finals I've had. There's no pressure. I didn't. I just went there to get on good bucking horses and ride bucking horses with me mates.
Yeah, I feel like it was, it definitely had that feeling to the finals this year. It was kind of everyone pulled together to put that event on in such a, we're having a really tough time here in the last 2 years. And I feel like right now things are getting crazy again. So it was good to see all the Cowboys kind of pull together for that. So how did that season, this last season, I know there's been talk of retirement. Take us through that in terms of, is that something that's on your mind, or, you're kind of putting that off for a while?
It's more the body more than the mind. It's taken me about 2 weeks after the finals to be able to even sleep properly. I was that sore, but I pulled up for about 18 months, Dallas. I wasn't feeling very good. I think 19 months actually, and then I heard of the bronc riding going to happen at Willinga in October, and I thought, well, I've rode broncs for a long time, going to $500 rodeos, and I want to be part of something that's going to be that big. So I put the sweatsuit on, and I've done a bit of jogging and a bit of training, and went north. Went to, I think I worked out and done 7 rodeos, I think, for the northern run, and had success at most of them. Got money at most of them. So, and obviously Mount Isa was the biggest paying one, so it sat me right up, behind the leaders, about midfield, I think I was, by the time we went to the finals. So it it was a pretty short sort of a season, but definitely without the ex-Broncs going ahead and the future of it, I probably would have left my saddle sitting where it was, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that Extreme Broncs here in a second, and Willinga Park. I mean, that is a super exciting event to have in the calendar for rodeo in general, not just bronc riding. But I wanted to talk about rodeo growing as a whole, and Extreme Broncs definitely comes into that. I know, just want to compare with you, you've been around the industry for a long time now. How do you think rodeo is progressing? I know, the genetics and the bronc riding, it's not something that's really talked about a lot, and it's something that's really apparent in other events. But, we're seeing some really great horses now, and we've had great horses in the past. How do you kind of compare that in terms of how rodeo is progressing?
I think with the breeding that the Gills and Gary McPhee have got going on, they're definitely getting more consistent numbers when they're breeding. So they're definitely, when you go to a rodeo now, you can look in the draw and think that's anyone's game. Whereas probably 8 or 10 years ago, there would be a big tail end in the field of horses and stuff. So it was, if the quality of horses was still there, but just not the depth in the pens. And with the breeding going on, there's that's definitely improving the genetics in the bronc riding and bareback horses. So it's definitely it's taken their time, I guess, I suppose, with the breeding, and that's definitely paying off for them contractors now. And they like with the number of broncs that they've got and the quality of them, the bronc riders are starting to, they're coming out of the woodworks now, sort of thing. I think we had 55 bronc riders or something at Upper Horton for New Year's Eve. So that just goes to show there's still some bronc riders about.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time. Now let's touch on Wrangler Xtreme Broncs. That's why we're here today. I think, the journey for Extreme Broncs is really just at the beginning. We've only had around 8 events so far, and we've got some great ones on the calendar. We've got Baraba this weekend, Chute's coming up, Bowen River, Richmond, and then we've got that massive Willinga Park in the works, which is, really exciting to be a bronc rider right now, but just rodeo as a whole, I think we're hitting a new level. So tell me about Extreme Broncs, what involvement you've had, and kind of your thoughts on having that dedicated event for bronc riders.
I think that's definitely brought us all together. We talk a lot more now, us bronc riders. We've got a page where we all sit down and tell our thoughts and work together as a team trying to make it better. We're guided by some very passionate cowboys as well to go with it. So I think everyone's in it together. Where the bronc riding as a standard is getting higher and higher each sort of event, I guess. Like the novice bronc riders up at Horton were 86 to win the novice short go. So I think they were back to about 82 or 84 after that. So that just goes to show what Extreme Broncs has put into the younger bronc riders, and it's made them want to be able to qualify for up and coming events. So the standard of bronc riding is definitely lifted by far, due to Extreme Broncs and what they've done.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I mean, we've got the Baraba Bronc busting ball this coming Friday night where they're paying out over $10,000. I mean, there's not many rodeos you can say that have that kind of payout for one event unless you're looking at Mount Isa or, those really big rodeos. So we're matching up some really great cowboys with some epic horses. How are you feeling about the event this weekend? What's your kind of picks on the horses and the cowboys to kind of take out this event?
Well, I'll take it out, that's for sure. No, I think I don't really care what I get on, because I know it'll be an even bucking horses, so I'm happy to get on whatever gets run underneath us. There's some good young bronc riders coming along. There's Cameron Southern, Tyre King, all them sort of younger fellas that have just stepped up a little bit from last year. Same deal due to the Extreme Broncs, like they want to be part of them. So they're going the extra mile now to be able to be part of these things. And I think you'd have to expect the hometown favourites like Mick Knight and them sort of boys to want to step up and win their hometown rodeo. So it's I'd say to be anyone's game, to be honest, but I'd definitely like to be in the top two to be able to secure a spot at Willinga, that's for sure.
How good is that to say, though, that it is anyone's game? I mean, that really shows the level where bronc riding is at in Australia right now, and not just the level of riders, but also the level of horses. So that is really exciting to see. What's your perspective on, Extreme Broncs is, yes, it's just for bronc riders right now, but in my opinion, it's definitely raising the level for rodeo in Australia. Do you see it really affecting rodeo? I mean, you have these great bronc riders going to one event, but then they are going to go to the rodeos down the road as well.
They are, and with the Extreme Broncs, it's a set-up deal where we can run them on a Friday night before a rodeo. So they don't take a full day to run. So you come on a Friday night, which helps the next rodeo just down the road get more bronc riders. So a lot of people will travel a lot further to get on 2 head of stock over a weekend, or 3 head if you make the short goes. And that encourages people to drive when your committees work together. And it's same deal, raises the standard of cowboys.
So all eyes are on Willinga Park. We're heading down there for October long weekend. Wrangler Xtreme Broncs is bringing bronc riding and rodeo to the world-class setup down there at Willinga Park. I mean, I'm super excited. And I think anyone who's involved in rodeo can really get behind this event. Terry Snow has done phenomenally well for the camp drafting industry. I mean, just look at, it's not just putting on an event, but also the horses that he's just purchased down at Nutrien. So tell me your thoughts on having a rodeo go to a world-class venue like that. I mean, we've got ALEC, but to have someone like Terry Snow back rodeo in Australia is pretty exciting.
It's exciting times, Dallas. I've never met Mr. Snow. For what he's done with camp drafting, and if he's looking at helping out with the rodeo side of things, I definitely want to be part of it. I know I've spoke to probably half a dozen older bronc riders who are pulling out the saddle to try and be part of Willinga as well. So it's set a standard, like you said. There's no other rodeo that's going to pay like Willinga. So for bronc riders, we all want to be there, and we can't wait to get there.
And just touching on that pay, I mean, $25,000 will be paid out at this event. We're also having an invitational bull ride, invitational bareback. It's going to be an event like no other has ever been seen in Australia. So I think raising that level, not just in the rough stock, but it's just you know, it has a greater impact on rodeo just in general. So 25 Bronc riders, who do you think we'll see there?
You'll see me there.
Awesome. No, very good. And we can't wait for it.
There'll be a good lineup of Bronc riders, and I'm sure the right 25 will be there, and it'll be definitely something to be looking forward to.
Yeah, we can't wait. It's going to be a very exciting event, and hopefully we can get, you know, everyone in the rodeo industry and just the general public down there to Willinga to watch, you know, the best 25 Bronc riders in Australia fight it out. So I'm super excited. Thank you, Tony, for joining us for our first episode of Chute Talk. It's been really great to kind of get to know you behind the success that we see in the arena and what shaped you to get you to where you are today. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Dallas.